Hi, everybody. Welcome to the May monthly Pressbooks product update. I'm Steel Wagstaff, the Pressbooks Product Manager. The things that I wanted to share would be this month, a lot of the work that we've done over the last month of May has been a kind of a spring clean and a refresh for the Pressbooks Directory. And so I want to just walk you through several of the things that we've done and how we've changed and updated the directory to be a bit better for people that are using it. So the first thing that you should notice is if you visit the Pressbooks directory, if you haven't been before, this is a free searchable catalog of now more than 5,000 open access books from more than 155 individual Pressbooks networks. So you'll see these numbers have changed recently. We added several new networks, and we also added some open source networks that finally were able to be included and indexed here. If you are an open source maintainer or have a Pressbooks network that you think should be included, please make us aware of it, and we will try to work with those network managers who want to be included to make sure their books can be indexed. You'll notice here at the top, the header and the footer now share the same header and footer as the Pressbooks marketing site. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But here you have introductory descriptive text that's been slightly rewritten to be a bit clearer. There is a button here that gives you a tour of the directory. If you've never used it before, you can navigate this via keyboard or mouse, and it will kind of show you the different components of the directory and how they work. So this shows you how the search function works. This is actually to perform a search. This will show you the search results. This is how you can change the display. This talks you through all the facet filters, and then where to view the filters, how to clear them, what's in a book card, and then visual icons, copyright, what the H5P activities mean, and then it links you to a guide chapter where you could learn more about how to use the directory or find books on the directory here. And so that's an element here. And then you also see that there are these curated collections. So our librarian at Pressbooks has built a set of collections. You can see all of the collections here on the left. I think there's now maybe 12 collections that we've built that have a variety of books. And we have 5 of them that are featured here. These are kind of high quality resources that we've curated on a given topic that we think may be of interest for people. So a lot of people have been working on student-led open pedagogy or student-led OER. So we put together a quick collection that has 26 books that we think are good examples of student-led OER or open pedagogy projects. And you can quickly see them here. You can also see that they have a little tag or a tab at the top that shows you the collections they're in. And you can toggle and apply a collection by clicking on the button. And you can remove them by clicking on the button there. So that's a little feature there that we've updated and added. Another thing that we changed and improved is you'll notice that the book cards have been refreshed and updated. The book cards now more closely resemble the book cards on the new Pressbooks catalog. So the cover image has been moved to the left. The display has been cleaned up and simplified here. We're displaying very clearly the license information, the number of H5P activities, and the number of words. And we've also added and are now displaying additional information about the institutions who have been publishing it, as well as the publisher. In addition to displaying that information, you can see if I go through a responsive view, the book cards are now, the whole thing is responsive. So on a mobile device, it will look a bit more like this. Whereas on a large screen, it'll look a bit more like this. You can see that there's a set of filters over on the left that allow you to do facet filtering like you would for an academic database. A new facet filter that we've just added is the institution facet filter. And so if you are at a consortial Pressbooks network and you're indicating which institutions have contributed to a book and you added that to the metadata, you can now use this filter, and I can see all of the books that Boise State is listed as the institution for here. And you'll see that's the field that's being filtered and faceted there. So that's a new thing. A couple other changes we made was we improved the overall page structure for accessibility. So we've redone the heading structure and the page section structure. These were changes made specifically to impact users of assistive technology or people with screen readers. So if you were to analyze this page, I can just show you a quick inspect tool. I have a little Axe Dev Tools. This is an accessibility checker or helper. If you scan this page here, you're going to see that we have 0 automatic issues, which is telling us we've got a clean bill of health for accessibility. Obviously, this is not This is helpful as an automated checker. Accessibility is much more than just satisfying automated checker. But if you were to look under the hood here, you can see this is clearly marked as the H1. It's in its own section with an ARIA label. And then down here, we've got another section here. Here's a second level heading. And then we move down into the filters. And these are third level headings and so forth and so on throughout the site. So the heading structure is now clear, consistent, coherent. Other accessibility changes we made were related to the book covers. So we added placeholder alt text for all book covers. So there's an alt text which will now give the title of the book and the word cover. So if you're an unsighted person and you're wondering what this image is, it is technically decorative because it's cover, but it now clearly indicates it's this book's cover image. So that was an accessibility improvement we made. And then we made a bunch of performance improvements just to make the directory load faster and be more performant. So the images are loading faster, the page loads faster, and we're hosting the Google fonts locally to improve performance and speed. So hopefully you should notice a snappy, fast, high-performing directory, and we hope that it satisfies your needs and helps you find the books that you're looking for. All right, great. The next thing I want to show is just a couple of tweaks and improvements we've made to this search query. So let me just look for language. And now you'll see there are 381 results, and it's helping me by visually indicating the active query that's been applied. So that was an improvement that we made just to make the results a bit clearer. And then, for example, I could then apply additional filters. I could say, I only want openly licensed books, and I don't want any all rights reserved, or I don't want all rights reserved. And the filter number has changed now to 367, and I don't want no derivative books either. So I've now just excluded those filters, and the number of results is now 334. What you could do if you wanted is you can take this URL and share it with someone, or there's a little button here that lets you copy the query URL. This allows you to share someone a specific search result or a specific set of filters or specific state of the directory with someone else if you want to say, hey, look what I found. And that's a nice little feature that's available there. You can clear these results, but you also can do something where if I were to clear the search by clearing in and clicking search again, the search gets wiped out. Let's say, though, I did a search for geology. And then I decided, oh, I don't want to be searching for geology anymore. I actually want to see one of these curated collections. We made a change so that whenever you click one of these curated collections, it will clear any active searches and just show you the filtered collection, because we think that's the desired behavior. So when you click a collection, it just applies that filter and clears any previous searches that you may have had in place. So those are the big kind of front end changes we've made to the directory. I want to pause and take any questions and ask for any of the things that you would like to see to make the directory better or easier for you or your faculty users to use to find the books and resources that you're looking for. All right, I see in the chat, Cheryl says, I appreciate the search functionality and the filters. I found the search works better than open textbook libraries. Thank you. I mean, the point isn't for us to be competition, but I do appreciate that. And we're trying, and we're happy to share any of the tricks and tips that we've learned to help other people improve their search tools as well. Yeah. Amanda, appreciate the student-led filter. Yeah, we found exactly being able to find a good curated list of open pedagogy projects. Now, we only know about the stuff we know about. So if you have really great resources on a particular topic that you think should be added to the collection, please email us and let us know. And we're always willing to update those collections with other new resources. All right, I have a question for the group. And one of the things that I'm thinking about is a couple of different pieces of metadata here. In particular, the thing that we're displaying right here is the last updated date. And this is the last time that the book has been revised in any form or the metadata has been updated. And this is a helpful indicator. People told us in the first round of feedback because they want to be able to see, oh, I want to find books that have been revised most recently, et cetera, et cetera. But one thing we're not including that we could would be the publication date. So in Pressbooks, you can list the date that a book was published. It isn't universally used, but I have a feature request or an idea that we should include the date published as well as the last updated. What are people's thoughts or feelings about date published and whether that would be useful and how you might want to use the date published feature as librarians or as general users of the directory? Any thoughts or feedback on that? Jamie, thumbs up, I see. Yeah, Nick, tell us more. When you said you'd like to show editions, how are you doing editioning with your books, and how would you like to show that?
So because we're on a schedule for updating to new editions, our first attempt was to clone a whole new copy and push that out as a second edition. But as we're doing that now, we're realizing that can cause quite a bit of disruption for people who don't necessarily come back and look for new editions. And then it might work better just to update the live book and put in an under maintenance note within like the introduction or somewhere where people where it's highly visible. It really is a work in progress, because we won't know a lot of the answers to how this works until we push it out and get some feedback.
Yeah, this is a really complicated but important question to solve, and maybe it's worth taking a couple of minutes just to discuss the problem of editioning with a larger group here. So I have an idea, an older issue. I'm trying to find it in our ideas repo, because let me try to set out what I think the situation is now and what some of the problems and drawbacks are, and then you can help me think through it. So let's say I published the first edition of a book and it's done, and I'm like, yeah, my first edition's done. Well, if it's an open license resource, it may be a living document, and I may be making additions, minor additions, minor additions, minor additions. And so how do I indicate to users this is edition 1.1 or 1.2? Or if I do a major revision, I can't save a revision while I'm working on it. I either publish it or I don't. And so that's a tricky problem that people have with Pressbooks, where you're like, I have the published version, I'd like to be working on a draft to replace it. Well, most of the time they have to clone the book and do that there. Some people would like to publish a revision in place, but do it in stages or do it all at once where you save the draft as, and that's a difficult problem to solve. And then the other question is, how do you indicate on the book that this is a minor revision or a major revision or a minor edition or major edition? The versioning problem, I guess, is a related problem. So where are you at in that process, Nick? Where are you stuck? What's hard? What would you like? What would be your ideal outcome?
I guess the ideal outcome would be so that people understand if there's content that has been updated holistically, like across the whole book, or a significant amount of an update has been made, that it would probably precipitate having to do an entire new print version that they know that's out there. Because that's where the big disconnect comes, is we can continue creating a dynamic product online, but then at what point do we have to let people know, okay, it's time
to
get
the new
the
print
new
version.
print copy?
Yes. Yeah. Because the edition, a living text on the web is fine, because every time you visit it, it's different. But you can't tear out 3 pages of your book and put new ones in unless you print them, and that's where it gets trickier. The print edition, huh? Okay. Yeah, great question. Because you also don't really know who's downloaded the print copy, right?
Correct. We don't know. I mean, we know, looking at it like our analytics, we know we have people worldwide.
Yeah.
But how often are they going back and updating, or needing to know that, okay, this content that you're using is now been updated, you might want to change what you're using.
Yeah, so. And it's very difficult because we don't track. I mean, like, unless the user gives you their email address when they download the book, we can't really notify them, which is a tricky problem. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, other people that are thinking about editions or editioning that have had thoughts or things that we should consider, I'd love to have this be a little open conversation. I know many of you have worked on books that have gone through multiple editions.
I have, I've been working on a philosophy textbook. It's a reader with some instructional material added. We're on our 4th edition. And so what we always do when we're ready to start making changes, we export new files so that we have copies of the original, and then we make a note on the front cover that says updates in progress as of, and we put the date. And then on our like intro to the book, or I guess, I don't know what you call it, instructor notes, I think we call it. We basically say each time we update what we've done. So we rearranged some chapters, we added 4 chapters to unit 2. And we basically just try to be as clear as possible about the differences between 3rd edition and the 4th edition, so that people can decide if they want to reprint the whole thing, or if they want, take a look at what we say we've changed. It's no doubt hard to manage. But that's the only book that I've actually done significant updates on.
Sure. Let me just show 2 quick examples of things that I'm familiar with that I've seen people do. One is, here's something that eCampus Ontario has done. And I think they got this from BC Campus. So some people have said, okay, we list a versioning history. I think this is in the back matter. Yeah, it's in the back matter. And so they're telling you when they've done major versions, the version 1.0 was on this date, and here's what was changed. Version 1.1, they changed this. Like, it's kind of what you're describing. It's like a change log. That's a bit of extra work and maintenance, but it can be nice to just give people a glance at what's changed and whether they want to adopt the updates or not. Another thing that I've seen is this Rebus book here, Blueprint for Success in College and Career. Every time they do a new release, they change this version number here. And I don't know, Apurva's just joining. She might be able to tell you how they keep track of and handle versioning. Hey, Apurva, we're actually just talking about something that Rebus does. Maybe you could jump in and fill us in. So the question is, we're talking about versioning for books and declaring editions. I was mentioning the Blueprint for Success in College and Career. Do you have other tips or experiences? You've done multiple editions of several books, including your Guide to Publishing Open Textbooks. How have you approached editions, versioning, and what are things that are working well? What are limitations? What are things that you'd like to see different in the future?
I think for our internal guides, it's been easier for us to make changes on the fly because these guides aren't being adopted in classrooms for a lot of OER textbooks that we've supported. The key factor is always thinking about the student experience if changes are being made mid-semester. So we've talked to instructors in the past about documenting the range of changes that they make in the book or they plan to make. And that version history that you shared in the Blueprint for Success, it's actually something that we modeled after BC Campus's version history.
Yeah, I just showed that example right before you joined. So yeah, okay.
Sorry for joining late. I think, from the management side, for a lot of people on the call here, it'll be good to have regular check-ins with your instructors who are using OER to understand what might need to change from different edition to edition and when to plan. Some of them have been fairly easy for the subject matter expert to do itself. It could be adding a new section or subsection in a particular chapter to help students get to a particular learning outcome. Some of them are more technological innovations that the instructor wants to introduce, which will take more time to build and require a little more project management support around. So it really varies from discipline, but also the range of changes.
Okay, so that's really helpful. I'm going to share, Nick and others. This is a GitHub ticket. I want to demystify this a little bit. GitHub can be a little bit daunting for people who don't work in software development. But what this is basically a user story that I wrote actually 3 years ago about this very problem. And we haven't made a ton of progress on it, but I want to take you through it. This is what we would call an epic because it's really, really big and would be made up of many smaller stories. But here is the epic that I've defined, and I'd love to validate the idea with you all. So the idea is, as an author or network manager, Pressbooks would like to allow users to declare or publish an edition of a book, whether it's edition 1 or 1.1 or 2 or 3, etc. If you declared or published an edition, we would then preserve a fixed copy of the text at a given moment in time, like a snapshot, kind of like what you could do with Google Docs when you declare a version of the thing. You could also associate a set of export files with a given edition. So for the same book, you could have the V1 PDF export, the V2 PDF export, the V3. You can see how this gets a little complicated, but That's the basic idea. After future edits are made, a new edition could be published in place for the webbook, and you could compare. Like, what would be cool is if we give you a comparison, V1 versus V2, and you know how we can show you the comparison with the clone. We could probably also show you a comparison of what the book looked like in V1 versus what the book looked like in V2. That'd be neat. And then related to what you were all just talking about, you could also have a system, we could also have a system that would then send a notification to anyone who had cloned the book previously saying a new edition has been published. Would you like to view it? And ideally, it would even let them accept the changes if they hadn't edited that particular chapter. So like, this chapter has updates in V2. Do you want to just slurp them in? And that's my big dream epic for what this might look like in terms of versions and editions. But there's a bunch of other notes here. But if you have questions or comments or things you'd like to add or refine or suggest, you're welcome to add them to this ticket. It's in the public GitHub forum, or this is something we could just discuss right now. This is the basic idea. How does that sound? What do you like, not like? What would you want to see added, removed, included if we were to start working on that as an epic?
I think that sounds really interesting. What I didn't hear you say was how versioning might affect your analytics. So the versioning problem that I'm having right now with an author in my department, and we don't ourselves teach with this book, but it's like an information literacy book that lots of people across the world have adopted. But the author is like really tied to her analytics now that there are really easy analytics to get to. And so thinking about when you are creating new versions, like how do you preserve the integrity of your analytics? Because for some people that really matters. And I love the idea of sharing an update with people who cloned a book, because that would be extremely helpful thinking about doing OER curation for folks. You would know, you would be able to stay on top of if there was new content coming in for those books that you cloned.
Okay, so super helpful. The second comment makes me feel like, okay, that's probably a pretty essential feature if we were to do this. The first, in terms of analytics, here's what I would be imagining. What I'm imagining is you would declare a new version of the book, but it would be published in place, so the URL wouldn't be different. It would just be when you go to the URL, you'd see version 2 rather than version 1, and then you could compare and view what the old version 1 looked like. So what would happen would be, as the publisher, you would know when you declared the new version, and the analytics would just stay in place. And so you could do your analytic comparisons and be like, how much page traffic did we have before version 2 versus after? But it would require, I think that analytics would just continue to be collected and associated with the same URL in the same way. I don't know how. Would that be acceptable? What would the user want or need, do you think? I just don't know.
I think it would be helpful if we think about like turnover in these kinds of positions and the way that like Pressman admin gets passed between that when that happens, that it might be useful to be able in the analytics to declare somewhere that version 2 happened.
We'd have to figure out, because right now the analytics don't have any concept of editions or editioning or events in the book. But if we were to make a CSV download or something like that, we could probably insert that. Okay, so that's really helpful. I'll add that as a kind of comment to this idea, Amanda, because that's probably important.
Yeah, because right now what I have happening is I'm working on basically a version 2 of her book, and then we're going to transfer that data back into the extant book, which is real annoying.
Yeah,
so I'd love to be able to version in place. That would be incredible.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I feel your pain, and I think that's exactly why we wrote this user story when we wrote it, thinking about that very thing. Okay, other thoughts or feedback on the idea of versioning or editions as it's been discussed?
I only have one author who's done a second version, but she said the way she created it was to clone the first edition and then work on that second edition. So I don't know
that's the most common way right now.
Yeah, so that would involve 2 different URLs in that case.
Yeah, and then your analytics don't transfer, which is what you have is how well the first edition is doing, and then once you announce the second edition, how well it's doing, and it's easy to compare. But if you wanted to publish in place, it's difficult to publish in place unless what I have seen sometimes, Cheryl, is if people want to, then they change the URL of the first book to say like old or first edition, and then give the second edition the old URL, which involves a bit of like URL switcheroos, but it's not the easiest dance. But some people have done that as a kind of workaround. Apurva, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that technically ISBNs require, like at least Library and Archives Canada require you to include a new ISBN for every version and edition of the book. So I don't know how
Correct.
it's handled if anyone is assigning ebook or print book ISBNs for their versions.
You do need to generate a new one, and it needs to be a separate one for each format.
Would there be fields in Pressbooks in the book info to allow you to update these numbers with
Yeah, if you were editing in place, then yeah, you'd have to do that. What you'd do is you'd save a new set of book info and declare a version. And book info would also preserve its version history, just like the chapters would preserve its version history. So
would users be allowed to access older versions should they choose for whatever reason to adopt?
yeah, that would be the idea. I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, we would definitely keep fixed versions of the exports produced for a specific edition. So you could download and it would have the ISBN associated with that PDF version 1. And I don't know about being able to view it or versus just being able to compare it. I'm not sure the technical feasibility of each, but if we just took a snapshot of the book at a moment in time, it's possible that we could still allow you to view the snapshot. That's probably a question for Christopher and our dev team. And right now, this is just an idea in Steel's head. We have not begun working on this, but the goal is to make this idea match what users really want, and then we will start working on it. So Christopher gave me a thumbs up. I don't know, but I hope that means something good. Okay. Anybody else have things they want to add or suggest on the topic of versions or editions? I can see that this is a topic of real interest, and it's a sign that we should prioritize it and think about it in the future.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. I think so much of the issue that frustrates my faculty here is the whole idea of what's happening to the books downstream. And I'll have composition professors, and they'll be looking for a book, and they see 6 versions essentially of the same book, and it's wonderful. I mean, it's a great thing that you can customize and make it the book that you want it to be, but it does.
But which one should I pick? Yeah,
right. It's just confusing because they're all so similar, and anything that we can do, I feel like, to clean it up and be very clear and transparent about how this book is different from this book, I think is useful.
Yeah, I think I really agree with you, Jimmy. Like, the philosophy of letting 1,000 flowers bloom is wonderful until you have to weed your garden, and then you're like, wow, there's 1,000 flowers, and which one's the
Right.
So yeah, I hear you. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so I will return back to the regularly scheduled agenda, but that was a really nice, thank you. That was super helpful for me. Other things that we've done, and I won't demo this, but I showed you the front end of the directory. Our team has been hard at work making major changes to the back end of the directory as well. And we have a tool that we use to collect all of the metadata and store in our search database. So it's what populates the database and keeps it up to date. And when you make a book private, we remove it instantly. When you update the metadata for a book, we collect it every hour. We call that tool the directory fetcher. And our dev team has done a total refactor rebuild of the directory fetcher to make it faster, easier to maintain, better to more reliable. It's will be largely invisible to you. Just know that it was some hard work to just make the behind the scenes stuff work better. You will see the results in the front end of the directory, and that the records are collected accurately and it works smoothly. So just wanted to mention that that's what we've been working on the last month of May. And another thing that I can show, if you haven't noticed, this is probably less of a product thing and more of just a general Pressbooks awareness and how we describe ourselves and communicate about ourselves. But many of you know that we have a marketing site. We have been overhauling and improving the marketing site so that it more clearly communicates what the Pressbooks Enterprise SaaS offering is and how it works. So this menu has been overhauled and changed here. It's clearer for how people can get a demo and talk to a sales rep if they want to do that. We have a clearer kind of introduction to what Pressbooks is and how it works. These visual identities have all been updated to more kind of give you a sense for what Pressbooks is visually. We have these new things that show you how you can create, adapt, and share. Our UX UI designer did some really nice work on all of this. We have a new kind of feature that we're building for like the kinds of things you can do with Pressbooks, some use cases and examples from the directory. And we've been overhauling the footer and a bunch of other child pages. So if you're an open source user or you know of someone who's interested in considering a Pressbooks Enterprise subscription, there's just clear information now on the plans and pricing where we can get you directly a quote if you want that. And it describes the Pressbooks.pub price tier and service offerings. So the marketing team's been hard at work at overhauling the marketing site. If you have questions or feedback about the Pressbooks product or about the sales process, you probably already had those answered long ago. But if you're at that stage in the journey or you're watching this video, that's something that the marketing team and the dev team have been working on improving. And anything that we can do to be clearer, more honest, more direct, and help you get the information you want faster with less hassle, we want to do that. So please let us know if you have a bad experience or if you think the experience could be better. Our goal is to be honest, transparent, and pain less as much as possible. So we're just people trying to help other people, and that's what we want to do. So that's what's been happening with the marketing site. The next thing I want to mention is kind of what's coming soon. There's two things that I will mention here. One is we're about to do a big strategic planning exercise for the next year at Pressbooks. We're doing it mid-year. So next week, the Pressbooks team will be gathering and talking about our vision for the coming year, as well as the plan for the quarter. One thing that we know we will be focusing on is improving the results for LMS product. This is an add-on that allows people to connect learning material to the learning management system. And right now it gives a high-level grade of how students performed. When we did our initial pilots, and some of you participate in those pilots, the biggest piece of feedback we heard from instructors was, okay, this is great. I now know that students are doing the reading and I'm basically just getting a participation score. But what I really would like is I want to know more about what students are learning and where, so that I can focus and change my instruction. So they wanted more information about the learning that's taking place. And students also wanted more insight into what learning has taken place so that they could decide where to focus their study. And so this summer, if you have anybody at your institution that's planning to use the results for LMS or to use Pressbooks with H5P, please let us know. We're going to be doing a bunch of user research and information gathering so that we can focus on the right learning analytics and the right questions about learning to answer with that product. So we're planning to do user research and interviews over the summer with an idea of building more learning analytics and answers to some of those learning questions into this product for the fall. Okay, I know Cheryl, you and I talked about this. This is the open invitation. So Cheryl, yeah, please let us know who's planning to use it or teach with it, and we'll make sure we get them into that user research. And I think a few of you have also talked to me about that. So this is the reminder that we want to make sure that we just get some of that coordinated before the summer term starts. The second thing that I wanted to share is many of you know that we announced a metadata sharing partnership where we're giving metadata from the Pressbooks directory free of charge to EBSCO, who is including it in their discovery and service products that they often sell to libraries. We know that EBSCO is not the biggest market player in that field. It's Ex Libris or ProQuest or Claravit or whichever the parent company is now. Many of you consume Ex Libris or ProQuest as your search and discovery tool. We have been in contact with ProQuest and Ex Libris and are working out a similar metadata sharing arrangement. It's not a financial agreement. It's just we're going to be giving them metadata for free and they're going to include it in their products. We haven't yet finalized that agreement, but we're getting closer, and I expect that will be coming soon. So hopefully, if you are an Ex Libris or ProQuest consumer, you will be able to see all of the directory metadata in your native discovery tools soon. And I think that will be exciting for those of you who are already purchasers of those products. Any questions or comments from me about that, or things that you'd like to see or not like to see?
Our library's discovery system is WorldShare, OCLC WorldShare.
Yeah.
Are there any plans to incorporate the data there?
Yeah, I would love to. I don't have a good contact at OCLC. I tried. WorldCat was the first place that I wanted to start, but I didn't get any traction when I tried to. So do you have, if you have a client rep or a product, I don't know, success representative, and they're interested in ingesting open metadata, then please send them to me or send me the link and I will try to get that started. But yeah, OCLC great to work with, and they got the open bona fides that would be pretty easy, I think, for us to figure that out.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I want to thank everybody for coming out to the May monthly product update. That was it. We look forward to seeing you again in June. Until then, be well, and thanks for all that you do.